We just need Nadia to focus on being happy for her brother instead of being jealous. That is what my mother said to me at a Sunday dinner on her good china, in front of my closest friend. She said it with a smile. She said it like she was reminding me to pass the salt. I picked up my fork. I finished my meal, and I didn't say a single word for the rest of the night, but my grandmother had already said everything that needed to be said. 13 years ago. On page 11 of a document no one in my family ever bothered to read. If you've ever been made to feel like your success doesn't count in your own family, hit that like button and subscribe. Now let's get back to Nadia. Let me take you back to the beginning. The dinner was at my parents' house in Marietta, a Sunday in late September. My mother had been hinting for weeks that something big was happening for Carter. She didn't say what. She just said it was a family celebration and that I should bring Diane. Diane Cooper is my closest friend. She's a senior project coordinator at the same infrastructure firm where I've worked for 11 years. She's sharp, she's honest, and she doesn't miss things. That matters later. When we arrived, the table was already set. My mother's good china, the white linen runner she only uses for occasions, 2 bottles of wine already open, candles lit in the center of the table. The house smelled like roast chicken and fresh bread. Carter was already seated at the far end, leaning back in his chair, grinning like he was waiting for applause. He's 28, 6 years younger than me. Broad shoulders, easy laugh, the kind of presence that fills a room and asks you to notice it. My father was across from him, smiling quietly at his plate. My mother directed Diane and me to seats in the middle, not at the head, not next to Carter. In the middle. Dinner started normally, small talk. Carter talking about his gym routine. My mother asking Diane polite questions about work. My father pouring wine and saying nothing. Then, about halfway through the meal, my mother set down her fork and folded her hands. We have something wonderful to share. Carter sat up straighter. My father stopped chewing. Your brother, my mother said, turning to me with that smile she uses when she wants you to know she's already decided how this is going to go, is buying a house. She paused, letting that land. And your father and I have decided to give him $200,000 toward the down payment. $200,000. I didn't move. I didn't blink. Carter leaned forward. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, half-acre lot in Kennesaw. You should see the kitchen, Nadia. It's bigger than your whole apartment. He laughed. My father looked at his hands. My mother turned to me. She tilted her head the way she does when she's about to say something she's been rehearsing. We just need Nadia to focus on being happy for her brother instead of being jealous. She said it with a smile. She said it the way you talk to a child who didn't get the toy she wanted. She said it in front of Diane. Diane went very still beside me. I could feel it. The air between us changed. Diane's hand was on the table, and I watched her fingers press flat against the linen like she was holding herself in place. I picked up my fork. I took another bite of chicken. I chewed. I swallowed. Congratulations, Carter, I said. My voice was even. My hands were steady. I stayed for dessert. I complimented my mother's pie. I helped clear the table. I hugged my father at the door. He patted my back twice, the way he always does, and said nothing. We drove home in Diane's car because I had ridden with her. The first 8 minutes were silent. Streetlights flicking past the windshield, my hands in my lap. Then Diane said quietly, without looking at me, she said that out loud, in front of me. She wanted someone to hear it. I didn't respond. I kept my eyes on the road. That night, I sat in my apartment, alone, lights off, thinking about what $200,000 looks like when it's handed to someone at a dinner table on good china with candles. I thought about that number. I turned it over in my mind the way I turn over load calculations at work. Precise, measurable, final. $200,000. Let me tell you what I have received from my parents in the 34 years I've been alive. A card on my college graduation. Inside it, a check for $250 and a note that said, "Proud of you, kiddo?" That was it. That was the investment. I put myself through Georgia Tech. I worked part-time at a civil engineering co-op starting sophomore year. I graduated with $31,000 in student loans and paid them off in 6 years on my own. I have been employed at the same infrastructure firm in Atlanta for 11 years. I make $94,000 a year. I have never missed a payment on anything. I have never asked my parents for $1. Carter's path was different. Carter went to a private university, tuition supplemented by distributions from the family trust my grandmother established. When he graduated, my parents bought him a car. Not a used car, a new car. When he launched a business at 23, a fitness apparel brand that lasted 14 months, my parents gave him $18,000 in startup capital. When the business folded, they said nothing. When he moved back in with them for 8 months, they said nothing. When he moved out and couldn't cover rent, they began sending him monthly transfers, $1,400 a month. For 3 years, that's $50,400. I know this because my mother mentioned it once, casually at Thanksgiving 2 years ago, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. We help Carter with a little every month. He's still finding his footing. He was 26. He had been finding his footing for 4 years. And now, $200,000 for a house. I did the math that night in my apartment, sitting on my couch in the dark, the way I do math at work. Precisely. Tuition supplements from the trust over 4 years of college. The car. The $18,000. The monthly transfers totaling $50,400, and now $200,000. I had received a card. I told myself for years that it was their money. I told myself that parents have the right to distribute their resources however they choose. I told myself that Carter needed more help because he was younger, because he was still building, because he hadn't found his footing yet. I told myself it wasn't about fairness, it was about family. I swallowed it, every time. I pushed it down, and I moved on, and I told myself this was simply what family did. But that night, after the dinner, after Diane's words in the car, I wasn't thinking about fairness anymore. I was thinking about what my mother chose to do. She didn't just give Carter $200,000. She staged it. She set the table. She lit the candles. She invited Diane, my friend, my witness, so that someone outside the family would be there to see it. And then she turned to me and told me, in front of that witness, that my only job was to smile. She chose an audience for my smallness. That was not an accident. That was a performance. 3 days later, I was alone in my apartment. It was past 10. The kitchen was quiet. I made coffee and then forgot to drink it. It sat on the counter going cold while I stood in front of the closet in my hallway, looking at the top shelf. There was a cedar box up there, my grandmother's. It had been sitting in the same spot for 4 years since she died. I had opened it once, right after the funeral. Inside were a few pieces of costume jewelry, a photograph of her standing outside her bookkeeping office in 1987, and a handwritten note on lined paper, folded twice. The note said, "Read everything, especially the parts that seem boring." I had smiled when I first read it. It sounded like her. Graham was precise, unsentimental, and she believed that people who didn't read documents deserved whatever happened to them. She ran her own bookkeeping business for 40 years. She balanced other people's books the way some people breathe. Automatically, constantly, without ever looking up to see if anyone was watching. I had put the note back in the box and closed the lid. I didn't know what she meant. Not then. That night, 3 days after my mother told me to be happy, I climbed up and pulled the box down. I opened it. I unfolded the note and read it again. Read everything, especially the parts that seem boring. Underneath the note, at the bottom of the cedar box, was a manila envelope. Inside the envelope was a copy of the Garrett Family Trust. I had seen the trust mentioned before. My parents referenced it occasionally, always vaguely, always in the context of Carter's needs. The trust covered some of his tuition. We used the trust for a few things. It was background noise. I never asked for details. I never asked for a copy, but Graham had put one in the box. I sat down at the kitchen table. I unfolded the document. It was 18 pages, dense, legal. Exactly the kind of thing most people would skim the first page of and set aside. I read every word. Page 1, page 2, definitions, beneficiaries, distribution schedules. Pages 3 through 10 covered standard trustee powers, administrative provisions, investment guidelines, the kind of language that makes your eyes slide off the page. Then I turned to page 11. I read it once. I read it again. I set the document down. I picked up my coffee. It was cold. I drank it anyway. I sat at that table until the street light outside cut through the blinds and the apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. My hands were flat on the table, on either side of the trust document, and I did not move. Something inside me snapped. Not loud, not dramatic, just a clean, quiet break. I picked up my phone, I opened the browser, I typed, Estate Attorney, Atlanta, Georgia, and I did not tell a single person what I had found. The first name that came up was Howard Reed, solo practitioner. 28 years of trust and estate law. No flashy website, no testimonial videos. Just a plain listing with an office address in Midtown and a phone number. I called the next morning at 8:07 a.m. His assistant answered on the second ring. I said I had a question about a family trust and needed someone who understood balancing provisions. She scheduled me for the following Tuesday, 1 week after the dinner. Howard Reed's office was on the third floor of a brick building off Peachtree. Small waiting room, no music, 2 chairs and a lamp. He came out himself, shook my hand, and led me to his desk. He was 57, gray at the temples, reading glasses on a chain around his neck. He didn't make small talk. He sat down, folded his hands, and said, "Show me what you've got." I handed him the trust document. I had marked page 11 with a yellow sticky note. He read the full document, not just page 11, all 18 pages. He didn't skip anything. He didn't skim. I sat across from him in silence for 22 minutes while he turned each page, occasionally making a small note on a legal pad with a pencil. When he finished, he went back to page 11. He read the clause again. Then he set the document down, took off his glasses, and looked at me. Your grandmother knew exactly what she was doing. I didn't say anything. I waited. He explained it in one sentence. The balancing clause stated that any cash gift or distribution to one grandchild exceeding $50,000 automatically triggered a right of equal disbursement to all other grandchildren from the trust principal. It could not be waived by the trustees. It required only one thing, a written demand from the qualifying beneficiary to the trustee of record. One letter, one clause, one mandatory obligation. Your parents gave your brother $200,000, Howard said. The clause is triggered. You are owed $200,000 from the trust. The trustees have no discretion to refuse. I sat very still. My hands were in my lap. What do I need to do? I asked. You need to tell me to file the demand letter, he said. That's it. I draft it, I send it to the trustee, and the trustee disperses. There's no hearing. There's no negotiation. There's no vote. The clause is self-executing upon written demand. I looked at the document on his desk. 18 pages, 13 years old. Written by a woman who ran her own bookkeeping business for 40 years and believed that people who didn't read documents deserved whatever happened to them. Graham had watched her son favor Carter for years. She had watched Dennis smile at his plate while Patricia managed the family like a stage director. She had watched Nadia, me, show up, do the work, ask for nothing, and receive exactly that. And she had walked into an attorney's office and written one paragraph on page 11 that none of them would ever bother to read. File it, I said. Howard nodded once. He picked up his pencil and made a note. That was it. No raised voice, no dramatic speech, no tears. I said 2 words in a quiet office on a Tuesday morning, and the mechanism my grandmother had built 13 years ago began to move. 2 weeks later, Howard sent the formal demand letter to the trustee. The trustee was a professional fiduciary, not my parents, though they were co-trustees. The trust document had named an independent corporate trustee to oversee distributions, which Graham had insisted upon. My parents had co-trustee status for administrative purposes, but the independent trustee held disbursement authority. The demand letter cited the balancing clause on page 11, referenced the $200,000 gift to Carter Garrett, and requested equal disbursement to Nadia Garrett as the sole other qualifying grandchild. One letter, sent by certified mail. And then I waited. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Carter. I didn't tell Diane. I went to work every day. I reviewed drainage plans and load calculations and project timelines. I ate lunch at my desk. I came home, made dinner, and sat in my apartment in the quiet. I did not call anyone. I did not check my phone for updates. 5 weeks after the demand letter was filed, the trustee responded. The clause was valid. The clause was enforceable. The disbursement was approved. $200,000, equal to the dollar to what Carter received. But that wasn't all. During the trustee's review of the trust accounting records, a standard step in processing any large disbursement, something else surfaced. The trust principal, which should have been approximately $287,000 after 13 years of approved distributions, showed an irregularity. There was a withdrawal of $73,000 that had not been formally documented as a trust distribution. No beneficiary designation, no trustee resolution, no record of approval from the independent trustee. $73,000 had been pulled from the trust by Dennis and Patricia Garrett, transferred into their personal account, and folded into the $200,000 cash gift to Carter. They had used Graham's trust to fund the down payment they were so proud of. And they had done it without authorization, without documentation, and without telling anyone. The trustee did not call me. The trustee did not ask my permission. The trustee referred the matter directly to the probate court for fiduciary breach review. That is what trustees are required to do when they identify unauthorized withdrawals. It is automatic. It is procedural. It has nothing to do with me. I did not file a complaint against my parents. I did not accuse them of anything. I exercised a clause. The system did the rest. The $200,000 hit my checking account on a Wednesday. I was at work when the notification came through. I looked at it once, set my phone face down on my desk, and finished my drainage review. I drove home at 5:15. I made dinner. I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the balance on my screen for a long time. Then I closed the app and washed my dishes. Patricia called within an hour of receiving the trustee's notification letter. I watched her name pulse on my screen. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. I deleted it without listening. She called again 11 minutes later. I declined the call. Carter called 40 minutes after that. His name lit up the screen while I was brushing my teeth. I let it go to voicemail. I deleted it without listening. Dennis called once. At 9:47 p.m., it rang 3 times and stopped. He did not leave a message. He did not call again. The next morning, 17 text messages. Patricia, Carter, Patricia again. I did not open them. I muted both contacts and set my phone on the counter. 2 days later, my doorbell rang at 7 in the evening. I looked through the peephole. Patricia was standing on my doorstep. Her blouse was untucked on one side. Her hair, which she never wears down, was loose around her shoulders. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her mouth was set in a line so tight the skin around it had gone white. I opened the door 6 inches. I kept my hand on the frame. I did not step aside. I did not say hello. "The trustee is claiming there's an unauthorized withdrawal," she said. Her voice was strung tight, pitched higher than normal. $73,000. They're saying your father and I removed it without proper documentation. This is a misunderstanding about paperwork, Nadia. That's all this is. I said nothing. I waited. This investigation, if it goes to probate court, Nadia, do you understand what that means? Penalties, surcharges. Your father and I would be personally liable over paperwork. Howard handles all of that, I said. Her eyes narrowed. Howard? Your attorney. You hired an attorney against your own parents. I hired an attorney to read a trust document, I said. My voice was even. My hand stayed on the door frame. You are destroying this family, she said, over jealousy, over money, over the fact that your brother is doing well and you can't stand it. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had set the table with good china, lit candles, invited my friend to witness my humiliation, and told me my only job was to smile. I looked at her standing in my doorway with her blouse untucked, telling me I was the one destroying things. I'm not doing anything, I said. I filed a legal document. Graham wrote the clause. The trustee is doing their job. I didn't file a complaint against you or Dad. I haven't accused anyone of anything. Patricia's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Your grandmother, she started. Read everything, I said, especially the parts that seem boring. Something moved across her face. I don't know what it was. Recognition, maybe? Or the first flicker of understanding that the woman who balanced other people's books for 40 years had balanced this one too. She stood on my doorstep for another 4 seconds. I counted them. Then I stepped back. The door closed softly. No slam. Just the quiet click of the lock sliding into place. I turned off the ringer. I walked to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water and drank it standing at the sink, looking out the window at the parking lot and the streetlight cutting through the dark. Carter's calls continued for 3 more days. I deleted each voicemail without listening. His texts went unread. I muted every notification. I removed myself from the family group chat. I deleted my parents' contact entries from my emergency information at work and replaced them with Diane Cooper's name and number. I did not do it in anger. I did it in clarity. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was sharp. It was clear. Carter's mortgage was the first thing to buckle. The source of funds irregularity, $73,000 pulled from the trust without authorization and folded into his down payment, triggered a flag in the lender's underwriting department. They didn't close the loan. They suspended it. Carter was 6 weeks into his purchase contract on the 4-bedroom house in Kennesaw, with the kitchen bigger than my whole apartment. And the financing froze beneath him like ice on a January sidewalk. I heard this through Diane. She didn't seek the information out. It came through a mutual acquaintance at the firm who knew Carter's real estate agent. Small city, Atlanta talks. Carter tried to restructure the loan. He submitted revised documentation. The lender came back with additional requirements: a full accounting of the gift's origin, a letter from the trustee, a chain of custody report on the $200,000. None of which Carter could produce cleanly, because $73,000 of it had no clean origin. The underwriter wouldn't budge. The seller, who had already moved out and was carrying 2 mortgages, gave Carter 30 days to resolve the financing, then 60. Then the seller's attorney sent a notice of default on the purchase contract, and Carter lost his earnest money, $12,000 gone. He didn't lose the house exactly. He never had it. The deal collapsed. The seller relisted the property at a higher price. Carter, who had already told everyone he knew about the 4 bedrooms and the half-acre lot and the kitchen, was back to renting. He negotiated a month-to-month lease on a 2-bedroom apartment in Ackworth. The rent was $1,650 a month. The kitchen was not bigger than my apartment. That was month 2. Month 3, the probate court opened the fiduciary breach proceeding against Dennis and Patricia Garrett. It was not a criminal case. It was not a lawsuit filed by me. It was a court action initiated by the trustee's referral. Standard procedure when unauthorized withdrawals are identified in a supervised trust. My parents were notified by certified mail. They were required to respond within 21 days. They hired an attorney. His name was Glenn Thornton, a general practitioner in Marietta who handled wills and property disputes and the occasional DUI. He was not a trust litigator. He charged $275 an hour and told my parents, according to what Diane later heard through the same acquaintance network, that they had a defensible position. He was wrong. The position was not defensible. The $73,000 withdrawal had no trustee resolution, no beneficiary designation, no documentation of any kind. My mother's working assumption that the trust was basically theirs to manage was not a legal position. It was a confession of negligence. Month 5, the probate court issued its ruling. Dennis and Patricia Garrett were found in breach of their fiduciary duties as co-trustees of the Garrett Family Trust. The court ordered a surcharge of $54,000, comprising the $73,000 unauthorized withdrawals' proportional impact on trust assets, court-assessed penalties, and trustee fees for the remediation process. The surcharge was payable by Dennis and Patricia personally, not from the trust, from their own accounts. $54,000. On top of the $200,000 they had already given Carter. On top of the attorney fees for Glenn Thornton, which by that point had reached $9,200. My father took a second mortgage on the house in Marietta. I heard that through Diane, too. I didn't ask. She told me once, quietly, over lunch at our desks. I nodded. I ate my sandwich. I changed the subject. The surcharge was ordered payable in installments, $2,250 a month for 24 months. My parents, who had spent a decade treating the trust as a personal checking account for Carter's ambitions, were now writing a monthly check to the probate court for 2 years. My mother stopped hosting Sunday dinners. The good china stayed in the cabinet. The white linen runner stayed folded in the drawer. I don't know this because anyone told me. I know it because Diane mentioned once that a cousin of a co-worker had asked her if the Garretts were going through something because the regular family gatherings had stopped. Carter's month-to-month lease in Ackworth became month 2, then month 4, then month 6. He was still working his sales job at a building supply company, still making decent money, but the mortgage suspension had left a mark on his credit file. A temporary flag, not a default, but enough that any new lender who ran his profile would see it and ask questions he couldn't easily answer. He drove the same car. He stopped talking about square footage. From what filtered back through the acquaintance network, which I did not seek out and did not encourage, he had become quieter, not humble. Carter was not built for humble, but quieter. My parents paid their monthly surcharge. They did not call me. I did not call them. The silence between us was not angry. It was structural. It was the natural result of a clause being read aloud for the first time in 13 years and a family discovering that the woman who balanced their books had balanced this one too. I went through my contacts one evening. It was a Tuesday. The apartment was quiet. I blocked Carter's number. I blocked my mother's number. I left my father's number unblocked, not because I expected him to call, but because I knew he wouldn't. Dennis Garrett had never been the one who called. He had been the one who sat at the head of the table and said nothing. Blocking his number would have been redundant. I removed myself from every shared photo album. I updated my emergency contacts at work, Diane Cooper, primary, my building super, secondary. I deleted the family group chat archive without reading the messages that had accumulated since I left it. I did not do any of this in anger. I did it the way I review structural reports at work, methodically, completely, without looking up to see if anyone was watching. 4 months after the dinner in Marietta, I closed on a house. 3 bedrooms, craftsman style, Decatur, Georgia, hardwood floors, a porch with a swing, a backyard with a magnolia tree that was older than I was. The kitchen was small and bright and had a window over the sink that faced east, so the morning light came in while I made coffee. The purchase price was $341,000. I paid cash, no mortgage, no lender, no underwriting, no source of funds questions. The $200,000 from the trust plus $163,000 in personal savings I had accumulated over 11 years of modest living, consistent contributions, and never once asking anyone for $1. The closing took 40 minutes. I signed the documents. The title company representative handed me 2 sets of keys. I drove to the house that afternoon, unlocked the front door, and stood in the empty living room with the light coming through the windows and the hardwood floors creaking under my shoes. I set Graham's cedar box on the kitchen counter. I took out the photograph of her standing outside her bookkeeping office in 1987, arms crossed, half smiling, wearing a blazer with shoulder pads that would have made anyone else look ridiculous, but made her look like exactly who she was. I leaned it against the window over the sink. That was the first thing I put in my house. 1 year after the dinner. A Sunday in late September. The magnolia in the backyard was starting to turn. I sat on my porch with coffee, hot this time, and watched the street. A neighbor walked past with a dog and waved. I waved back. The house was quiet, not empty quiet, full quiet. The kind of quiet that comes from a space that belongs to you because you earned it, and no one can tell you to smile about someone else's good fortune while sitting in it. Carter's mortgage situation remained unresolved. He was still renting in Ackworth month to month, while his financing was restructured. The credit flag had not cleared. The 4-bedroom house in Kennesaw had sold to someone else 3 months earlier for $15,000 more than Carter's original contract price. My parents were 11 months into their 24-month surcharge payment plan. The second mortgage on the Marietta house was current. Glenn Thornton had been paid. The good china was still in the cabinet. My father had not called. My mother had not called since the number was blocked. Carter had not called since the number was blocked. No one showed up at my door. No one sent letters. The flying monkeys had exhausted themselves against a wall of silence and found nothing to push against. I went to work every day. I reviewed drainage plans and load calculations. Diane and I ate lunch at our desks on Wednesdays and went to a Thai place on Fridays. I slept through the night. I woke without dread. On that Sunday morning, 1 year out, I finished my coffee and went inside. I washed the mug. I set it on the rack. I looked at Graham's photograph leaning against the kitchen window. 1987, arms crossed, half smiling. And I said, out loud, to no one, I rid everything. The house was quiet. The morning light came through the window. The magnolia rustled outside. Some doors close so better ones can open. I never regretted a single second of it. If you enjoyed this story about standing your ground and knowing your worth, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell for more stories just like this one. Thanks for watching.